But at the end of the day, if it's junk, it's junk. So what I'm gonna do is try some mechanic in a bottle. Well, that don't exactly sound great. Welcome back to the Lost Cause Ranch. Well, as it turns out, with owning a Freelander comes Freelander problems. And today we're gonna try and figure out what came a knocking on our new little Freelander 3-door, because we can't have whatever is going on under the hood to continue going on for too much longer. It doesn't exactly sound the healthiest, although it does sound a little bit better than the engine in the 109 Nada did. Mainly because that was never going to make a sound at all. Well, this is an oddball warning. Apparently, I'm not supposed to dump gas down there. Yes, down there. Good thing they put that there because I was just about to frickin' do that. But anyways, I think the first thing we are going to do is get our filter box engine cover out of the way, because we are going to play doctor. That is right. I'm a professional. I have a stethoscope. But to use that, this guy is gonna be in the freaking way. Now, like I've mentioned before, unlike all the other Rovers, I haven't really played around with one of these, so this is all new to me. But what we're gonna do is take a little listen and see what we can determine. To me, with just a quick cursory listen, it sounds very tappety. Upper engine, not quite like a low knock, but I've been known to be wrong, so we're gonna see if we can pinpoint stuff. I got a couple ideas on what it could be, but essentially what we are going to do is take our little mechanic's stethoscope, start poking around at things, and try and pick up where the noise is louder. Kind of noisy all over. What I'm going to try and do is see if I can use the microphone to give you guys a little closer listen instead of just a closer look. So you can kind of hear it off the valve cover, a little bit on the intake manifold, a little bit on the front cover. But if we go down against the block, it's fairly distinct. Right here on the top of the cylinder head, it is also pretty distinct. And if we go on the back side of the intake camshaft, pretty tappety there too. But right here is quite a bit more metallic. And if we go on top the front engine mount bracket, we got a good metal clank there as well. All right, so I got a couple theories, but we'll get to those in just a minute. I'm going to rule one out real quick here. I don't think that what we're hearing is the intake manifold. But I'm gonna take this Viz motor off, which actuates the variable vane butterfly system inside the manifold. Like I said, I've never had one apart, but from my understanding, they have essentially adjustable runners inside, so they can change the runner length with RPM and throttle, therefore being able to adjust the torque curve. Longer runner length will give you more low-end torque, shorter one, peak horsepower, so they're able to play with that. There's two Viz motors. This has a butterfly valve. This one actuates the variable runner valve setup. That's all plastic, and we all know how plastic does over time with heat cycles. It doesn't. It breaks, and that can cause a racket and a bunch of noise. It's just 4 screws and 1 connector, so we're gonna pop this guy off quick. There's our motor, and right there is the rod that actuates the valves inside the manifold. That guy seems to move pretty freely, but the big test is pushing down on it, and does it spring back up? And it does. Doesn't have a whole lot of play. So that guy, I believe, is in good shape. Just my guess here, by the fact that this screw had some tamper paint on it, and we got some goofy zip tie connecting a broken connector back into place. This has probably already been addressed, or at least messed with to some extent. So that is not our problem. Unfortunately, to some extent, because if it's just a bolt-on plastic manifold, even though they're a bit expensive, better than internal stuff on an engine. But my current leading theory involves this and this. We're gonna take a peek in there. And without taking too much apart, at this point, the belt does look like it has some age on it. We got a little bit of cracking going on. So my leading theory is we either have timing belt tensioner gunked up, making a racket, or more than likely a hydraulic lifter that is gunked up, not doing its job, and letting things smack around on the inside. And that can come from lack of oil changes, wrong oil used in oil changes. These things just weren't super popular over here in the US. And the fact that they have a freaking oil filter that is just used on this KV6 engine, nothing else, I'm guessing, over the course of its 20 plus years of life and 120,000 miles, it's probably had some oil changes that we'll say were deferred or just skipped altogether. So what I'm going to do is try some mechanic in a bottle. Yes, we are going to attempt an engine flush with a little bit of motor flush. What we do here is right before the oil change, we dump this bottle in and let it idle for 5 minutes. Then we drain the oil. And this is supposed to take some of the gunk with that oil. Then we're going to put a new filter on along with some fresh Castrol 5W40 synthetic. I kind of want to get a good baseline and know what we got in there. Because like I said, I have no idea of the history of oil changes and whatnot. And with the fact that filters are hard to get, I don't know the last time the oil's been changed. I don't know what type of oil is in it besides the 2 quarts that I put in it to drive it home. So that is where we are going to start out. And essentially what I'm looking for is not a complete fix, but a change. So if we do that engine flush, fresh oil, and we get a change in tone, frequency, or volume of that knock or rattle, or let's just call it a tap, maybe even a tick. But no, if we get a change in any of that, we know we are in the right direction. And what is crazy, with the power of the internet and YouTube, I already had a gentleman reach out with a lot of the parts that we would need if we're going to dive into this. Timing belt kit, timing tools, head gasket set. Don't know if we're going that far in yet. As long as it's not super catastrophic, I'd like to keep the 2.5 liter V6 in there. But at the end of the day, if it's junk, it's junk. And maybe a TD4 could be in the little hippo's future. I really envy all you guys across the pond that were able to get the good engine, or at least the better engine. See, if we did a TD4, we'd get rid of all the problems of the Freelander. Well, I guess not all the problems. We'd get rid of the KV6 problems of the Freelander. I'm gonna go ahead and set ourselves a timer for 5 minutes. They don't want you to run it with that in there for more than 5 minutes, and they don't want you to go above idle. I imagine they just don't want you to do damage by washing out the lubrication on bearings and rings and whatnot, because it's much thinner and it's not an oil. So we don't need to do permanent damage to anything that doesn't already have it. One could almost convince themselves that it's already getting quieter. Almost. So this stuff is not a very expensive product. I think I paid like $7 for 1 quart. But I'm guessing it's not expensive because it's mainly diesel and kerosene with a couple other additives. So I guess for a quart of diesel and kerosene, it is kind of expensive. But then again, if it works, it's not expensive. Now we can just go ahead and drain that gunk out of there. Now we want to drain this hot because the oil will be at its thinnest point, and we want to get as much of the crud and nasties built up inside the engine out of there. I found some more zip ties holding connectors on. Also, the nicest battery tie down I have ever seen. Well, hopefully the knocking noise is somewhere in there. I mean, to tell you the truth, I don't hold a whole lot of faith in this, but we'll fill it back up. Some good quality oil, new oil filter, see what happens.
No, but that's an interesting question. You know, I am not someone who likes ridiculum, and I didn't consider it the situation. All right, I'm going to tell you the CNC
Now already I think it sounds a tiny bit better, but we're gonna see if we can make it even quieter with a good old Italian tune-up. And if you're not familiar with that phrase, we're just gonna go beat the snot out of it. So what we're doing here is we want to build up some heat in the engine, thin the oil out a little bit, and then have a variation of RPM with some of that near red line so we can get the oil pressure bumped up and try and either work some of the gunk that's built up inside the hydraulic lifters out or pump them up with some fresh oil. See, most hydraulic lifters have a very small port or hole for the oil to feed into it, and the typical sign of a lifter going bad is a quick couple second rattle right on startup, and it goes away. When they fail completely or are very gunked up, you can have that last longer or indefinitely and never pump up again. I don't know how it sounds on camera to you guys, but I think we nailed it. Listen to how much quieter the little Freelander is now. It is nearly 100% gone. The microphone's probably picking it up much louder than it is in person. It tends to do that on this type of noise. Man, that is good news for our little 3-door Freelander. I think we'll be able to save it. Today is a good day. With that matter, any day we don't lose the engine in a Land Rover is a good day. Man, this thing is hot. Like someone just went and pounded the piss out of it. There's really no good place to stick your hand on this side. Got a radiator hose here, hot engine there. It burns a little. Much better. Just as I expected, this thing is pretty frickin' grody inside. Look at some of that buildup. That would be the leading cause of our problem, I am sure. I'm guessing we kind of nailed it on the fact that it probably hasn't had regular oil changes, or at least regular oil changes with the correct weight, high quality synthetic oil. Now, some of the stuff near the spark plug holes, including like that there, is actually from the coating on the valve cover gasket itself, but there is quite a bit of old junky oil buildup sitting in there. So that would 100% explain as to why our hydraulic lifters are getting plugged up. So the lifters go underneath the camshaft in between the lobe and the valve spring. This lobe hits the lifter. The hydraulic ones look like this and use oil pressure to make up the correct distance between the camshaft. Good news is this guy is savable. It is just going to take a little time and effort on our part. I think what our plan of attack is going to be at this point, we are going to put some miles on this guy with the correct oil in it. A nice high quality synthetic will clean some of that gunk out over time. So we'll do some long drives to where we get the oil nice and hot. And then I think we'll do another engine flush. We may even drain the oil, run it on a little bit of automatic transmission fluid before we change the oil again. The detergents in the transmission fluid will go a long way in cleaning that out as well. It's not something you want to go drive around on though. But then I think the old Freelander will be due for a set of new hydraulic lifters. We may be able to get these to come back to life, but I noticed even after driving it, as we let it sit and idle over the course of like 10 minutes, the tapping noise started to come back and increase in sound a little bit. It's not a big deal in the grand scheme of things. This could have went way worse. These guys also have some cylinder liner issues if you overheat them. Those slide kind of like the 4.6 in the Discovery 2. But I was pretty sure that wasn't the case with this one, just by the noise itself and the fact that when that happens on these, they tend to continue to overheat and mix coolant. And our particular Freelander had no coolant oil mixture on either system. And over the years, we've run across a lot of lifter noises in vehicles. We did work on BMWs and the E90s with the N51, N52 6-cylinder. Developed a lot of noises like this, especially if you drove them like a grandma. Gotta go with an Italian tune-up on your vehicle every once in a while. Amazing what that can take care of. And if it doesn't fix it, it usually points out your problem in a much more catastrophic way. With that being said, appreciate you guys watching. Appreciate you subscribing. I'm happy that we will probably be able to keep this 2.5 liter KV6 on the road. And I think we'll do the timing belt and everything at the same time, because that looks like it could create future issues too.